Jews, will it be us or all those leftists and their non-Israeli Jews?
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain. America, America, we're playing it the same.
Do you want your children learning about gender in class? Do you want fetuses murdered en masse? No, you cannot trust the facts on reproductive health one bit. If your 10-year-old gets raped, then you make her deliver it. So say the white kids from Turning Point, the white kids from Turning Point, fighting for the right to fight the right, fight for the right. Yes, we're the white kids from Turning Point, the hardest of the right. So come join our Christian movement and become a real white, a real white, a real white kid from Turning Point.
There you have it, folks. That's Mitt Nerd. I've actually got a command for them as well. Eve, make sure that's working. Yeah. For the best musical time of your life, you should be following Mitt Nerd 36 and watch a normal nerd turn into the superhero Nip Nerd. And to tip the nerd directly, please donate here. And the link is provided, or will be. Right here under my face. It'll pop up. Here we go. There we go. Not sure why I'm so turned around today. Hey, welcome in, everybody. Thank you for the reminder, Curse Chaos. I got YouTube going. There is a problem with the YouTube chat right now. I was in the process of trying to troubleshoot that problem when I ran out of songs to play. So here we are. I'm going to try and troubleshoot that while we are streaming, but there's usually not, a whole lot of activity on YouTube anyway. Where I'm still not sure why we're having the issue. For probably about 2 months straight, I've not had any problems with Social Stream Ninja. And I've done something now that I think will require that I just completely nuke the source and refine the source, which is really not that difficult. I just don't want to do it. Or wait, maybe I can refresh all stream. No, that's not going to do it. Yeah, something went wrong there still. Okay, well, okay. I'll do that in a minute. But anyways, it's great to see you, Jane. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're having a fantastic day. I'm doing not so bad. So far as, I'm still getting ready for stream. Oh, wait, something just happened. YouTube just did something on its own. Hey, it looks like it's working now. And I didn't even have to troubleshoot anything. All right. Actually, I think I refreshed all of the sources. At the top, there's an option. And it looks like that might have solved my problem there. Let's see what happens. Type something in over here. Is that going to pop in? Hey, there we go. Yep. Good. Fantastic. I love it when things just work out. And it looks like my stream is pretty good. We've got good weather. We shouldn't have any problem. Last stream I had to stream from my phone. Or not stream from my phone, but I used my phone as yes, we are going to yes. Thank you. Specifically that I keep bringing it up and I keep talking about this thing and then not explaining the thing. It keeps getting shelved. and we need to just get that out of the way. That is a fantastic idea, Jane. That is absolutely on the docket for today. That'll probably be one of the first things that I do. So the very first thing that I'm going to do is address at the very end of stream, on the last stream, I was tired, y'all. And I'm not trying to make excuses, but upon reflection, I had gotten locked into trying to prove that a particular thing in a particular way, and I lost sight of the whole conversation, the whole reason why I was talking about what I was talking about in the way that all the choices that you make are choices that you want to make. Right. This is an important philosophical idea that has to do with our judgments and how we make judgments and determining where it is that we have free will, to the extent that we have any free will at all, which we're going to be talking about a lot today. And to get to unpacking that more fully, understanding that those ideas of free will, we will have to discuss this. We'll have to talk about this distinction between truth and knowledge. That's part of the difficulty I think that we were running into, is that I was trying not to have to explain that. And there were a lot of other things that I was shutting down. Rather, there are things that if I was more concerned about philosophical investigation, then I would have pursued other courses of discourse and other modes of thought. And I instead of entertaining those, I was kind of trying to ignore and shut those down, which isn't very helpful in philosophical discourse in general. And I was I was locked into trying to prove a point. And the whole point in the first place of me proving that point was so that I could come back and overcome it. So I don't know why I was arguing so hard about it. But again, I think I was just tired. Tene koe, Kaimatara. I looked it up, and Tene koto. Tene koto is greeting for everyone if I was trying to greet everyone, but if I'm saying hi to you specifically, then I should say tene koe, right? So welcome in, tene koe. I hope you're having a great day, Kimatara. Where was? Oh, right. So that's not to say that William of Orange was right about what we were arguing about. They're still mistaken about the choices and the way that we make choices. But there were certain ideas that they, because I'm not positive, I'm pretty sure they're a he, but shouldn't make sweeping assumptions. There were pushbacks that he was trying to make, or they were trying to make, that I could have steered in a more productive direction. For example, there's the distinction of the choices that you make that are not entirely yours. And this includes things like addiction, right? If you are addicted to a chemical substance, for example, when I was trying to quit smoking, there were many times that I would light up a cigarette and think to myself, I really dislike this. I don't want to be doing this. I wish I were not doing this anymore, right? And so there's a lot more gray area to be explored there. The gray area doesn't exist in the way that the conversation was going, and that's the point that I was trying to make. You make the decisions that you want to make. If you are a smart smoker, that is still a choice every time you light that up. That you light your cigarette. It is still a choice every time, but the degree to which you have real freedom, the degree to which you have real autonomy, those are different questions that are not the same as it is still a choice that you still make, that you are still responsible and accountable for, in a moral sense, right? And we need to have this clear distinction for morality to be something that we can hold against each other, that I can hold you accountable when you're dishonest with me, right? That there are consequences even if you didn't intend those consequences. And when we're talking about what we choose to do, we are still culpable or praiseworthy for the things that we do. And they are our choices to the degree that we have some choice, right? But that we're going to talk about the complicated nuance there. We're going to talk about the gray areas a lot more today. And the plan is that we're going to begin on the conversation of truth and knowledge. We're going to tie that in with all of the stuff that we were talking about on last stream. And where I would like that to go is, I thought that it was still going to have that. Okay. To this video, which is the first of a few that Jane put in the Discord. This is going to be a great opportunity for me. Anarch is a content creator that I have been aware of for a very long time and have not had the time to really get that into. So I don't know very much about them or their content or their political leanings. And wouldn't you know it, that's literally what this first video is going to be about, is going to be a brief overview, a condensed version of many of their other videos, while the content creator is explaining to us who they are and the kind of political leanings that they have so far as anarchism. So that's on the agenda for today. I believe that we will probably cross through, this to get there. I thought that was going to look different. I mean, it's not important for me to switch. Yes. Where's that other source? Where is that source? Okay, there we go. Right, I believe that we'll go through this to get there, but we might not go through this to get there, in which case we'll just talk about this on Friday. This and one other quick bring up before I move on. Because I want this to be something that I bring up now so that it can be on the radar, because this is something that I want to have a much larger conversation about, or really more of a deep dive. Because when I read this headline, I thought to myself, well, it's probably a little bit sensational. I bet that it's not quite as shocking as this, but it turns out it is, actually. And not only is that the title an understatement, actually, there's a whole lot of other things that are going on that are very much like this, that are adjacent to this, that are really massive alarm bells. And so I wanted to start doing some more investigation into some of these things, but that's not on the agenda for today. I just wanted to bring that up. I've always got lists and lists and lists of things that I'm trying to work through. So we're going to do the best that we can to work through them. We could break down different methodologies of truth today. Yes. Yes. So we might want to start with the distinctions of episteme versus doxa and gnosis. It's going way back. Maybe this is too far back. Yeah, I think that's too far back. We don't have to go that far back. Truth and knowledge. So, and this is not going to take that long. I don't know why I've made such a big deal about this. Something that is sometimes not obvious is that the way that truth and knowledge is the same, and the ways that truth ways multiple, stressing ways that truth and knowledge are not the same, because there's a lot that has to do with them not having much overlap. And one of the things that we can contrast, maybe we could start with correspondence theory. So roughly, correspondence theory states that a statement is true if that statement corresponds to actual states of affairs in the real world. Very simple, it seems. The problem with correspondence theory is that you get variations. You get differences in meaning. This is the problem of rationality that I've explained a number of times. And this is a problem that was pointed out by Wittgenstein. So you've got this this period in philosophy where Bertrand Russell and a whole cabinet of other self-appointed, self-righteous assholes are deciding for everyone on everybody else's behalf what philosophies are true, capital T, and we should consider to be canonically real metaphysics, and then feminism, and then other kinds of race theory, and indigenous theory and mythology and all of these other things that aren't going to be considered as real, right? So this is a stunning period of philosophy. There's a whole lot of stuff going on. And Bertrand Russell's pretty sure that we've got this correspondence theory down. That what we need to do is we need to hammer out all of the structural meanings associated with all of the words and terms that we are using to verify states of affairs in the world, such that we can make true statements and then make sure that they correspond with actual states of affairs in the real world, and that we have mechanisms of truth telling which can help us divine through methods of pure reason that we can know for sure concretely true truths about these things. But what this requires is that when we are referring to different ideas or terms or concepts or subjects, what we need to do is we need to iron out all of the possible meanings and all of the possible relationships around all of those possible meanings. And once we have all of those cleverly mapped out sufficiently and exhaustively, then we will have capital T truth and know that those things are true about the world. Right? And this is where Wittgenstein begins to differ. So for I want to say, I shouldn't guess the number of years because I don't know. For some amount of years, Wittgenstein was kind of under Bertrand Russell's wing. And Bertrand Russell was the big head over, well, maybe not the head, but when it came to the determining of other philosophies, what was going to be determined as canonically true and that which was going to be rejected or considered as just a fun side project to think about, not real philosophy, that they were in accord with a lot of the ways that they thought about other philosophies and determining truth. But this is where they begin to depart. Wittgenstein starts to notice that regardless of how exhaustively you map out the meaning of the terms and words and ideas that you are working with, they can still be misinterpreted. And this is true of like legalese even. Even if you go through all of the work and effort, and those of you who are familiar, at least somewhat, with legalese, the language is designed to be as precise as possible, leaving no room for error or margin for misunderstanding whatsoever. It's intended to be explicitly clear without exception. But even if you have gone through all of the work to do structuralism, that's what I'm talking about. The whole Bertrand Russell project is structuralism. If you go through all the work of doing the structuralism, it still doesn't matter, because rational agents are still going to use different rules of understanding and different rules of comprehension to make sense of those ideas, and then to reform them into new ideas that they can convey to other people with words. That is an inevitable process of what is true about the world, it seems, according to Wittgenstein. And so there was a great departure, and after this great departure, then there's allowed to be a lot of other dissent about, well, maybe this project is not so sure. Maybe instead of telling everybody else that they're all absolutely necessarily wrong about all of this stuff, when we don't have our own theory ironed out yet, is not a good idea. And so this is when philosophy begins to move away from structuralism, and then we start to entertain other ideas again. We cannot be absolutely certain, though. Right, absolutely. It reminds me of the song Vanguard by David Rovics. I am the leader of the workers, and I'll tell you why the left is suspect, because there's something you don't understand. Only my line is correct, because I am the vanguard of the masses, and all you should just follow me. If you doubt my analysis, you must be in the petty bourgeoisie, right? Categorically, right? If you disagree with me, and Kaimatar, good. That's something that this is an idea that I am also putting on the back burner that I want to think an awful lot more about. And I'll just plug it really quickly here. There are practices and policies that the left sometimes insists upon. And one that has recently come to my attention that might need some kind of revisiting is how we treat platforming fascists, right? As a policy, we always respond in one kind of way to the idea of platforming fascists. And there's good reason for us having a strong policy, and that we always use that one approach and that one way of looking at things. But that's also not materially aware, right? To shut off any avenue of possibility has its own drawbacks, and this is something that I've this idea specifically of platforming fascists is something that I've done over and over and over and over and over. I've thought about this a lot. It's not as though I haven't already dedicated a tremendous amount of time and effort to these considerations, but there are some voices now which are starting to get me to reconsider some, not platforming fascists, but that maybe the always having knee-jerk responses to our material conditions might not be something that's a good strategy. That when it comes to how we should be, maybe we should be more flexible and thoughtful and aware of our material realities, and how we are supposed to accomplish a better world. So that's kind of touching on that, right? That the reason why that makes me think about that is because there are a lot of people on the left who seem to consider themselves as maybe not vanguard, but consider themselves as the police, as the as purity testers, as bullshit detectors, as people whose jobs are inspectors, are to root out and seek out people who are not playing left by the rules, right? Not wearing the uniform of the left in the right way. To go back to that analogy that I really like, the thinking about leftist activity and leftist language, and being a leftist as something that is kind of, for many people, it's a costume, right? For some of us, it's a way to identify ourselves uniformly, like we demonstrate ourselves to be a certain kind of way, so there's an outfit that goes along with the with being a leftist. And I think that it's a very helpful analogy to contrast the uniform with a costume, right? Because there's not really a big difference. And if you don't have context, seeing somebody in some kind of getup, it's difficult to tell whether they're in uniform or whether they're in costume. Right? So I think that there's a lot of play in that analogy that's kind of helpful. We all have different schema, right? We all have different schema, and that is definitely where we run into the problem. So yeah, getting back to, or bringing this back to the difference with Wittgenstein and Bertrand Russell. That's what Wittgenstein says, is that when you are watching people play sports, right? When you are watching a group of, let's say, children, I think the analogy works better with children. If you see a group of children that are playing a game, and it appears that all of the children understand all of the rules of all of the game, but you really can't be sure that all of the children understand all of the rules in all of the same way. They are able to play as though all of them understand all of the same rules in all of the same way, but if you asked them, right, it might not be clear. When I first started playing Pee-wee football, when I was a little kid, I really had no idea what I was doing for the first year that I played. I could tell which direction I was supposed to run in most of the time, but I had a hard time telling when I was supposed to run, to where I was supposed to run, and what I was supposed to be doing there, because I didn't understand the sport. I played for a whole season with a whole bunch of other kids, and there's footage of me on the football field looking like I know what I'm doing with no clue, right? I don't understand the rules. I don't understand how to get the points. I don't understand how the points work. The math is already above my head at this point. And I think that this that analogy helps us understand that when we are going about our daily lives in the regular world, that we don't always know that all the other people are operating under the same rules, with the same understanding of all the same ideas that we have. Which is why we should talk about it and why we should be vocal about the differences that we notice, right? Which is a conversation that we've had here on this channel over and over and over again, that the real truth of meaning is in the differences in our understandings of the world, actually, which is where we're going. But that's the conclusion that we're trying to get to. But we still have quite a bit more to get to, right? So we've got this, we're in the problem of working out correspondence theory. Here's where we enter in Zizek and the problems associated with ideology, because it turns out that when you are having a conversation with a conservative person, self-reporting, right? A conservative on some social media website. You rather than it being necessarily a problem of meaning, where they might not be operating under the same rules about the terms, right? It's not quite that different. It's more. You're speaking whole different languages, and those languages are not in any way compatible. And the reason why those languages aren't compatible is precisely because you are using all of the same words. And you are using all of the same words with such extremely different meanings that there's no amount of clarification that you can add to the words, because you would have to use more words, which all have a confounded meaning, which does not properly translate across those lines. So when you're having conversations with your racist uncle or with your ununderstanding aunt, conservative aunt, whatever, when you're having conversations with other people and it seems like you're bashing up against a brick wall, it's because you literally are. There are no avenues of epistemological similitude by which you can communicate. And this is a problem that I've talked about before, that it requires, if we want to solve this problem, we can't focus on the words or the ideas. What we have to do is we have to understand them. We have to understand them well enough to understand the axioms of truth and value upon which they build all of their other ideas about identity and meaning and virtue and what's good in general, right? So you have to get not even down to brass tacks. It's further down than that. Right? It's under, you have to get to the foundations of their understanding of the world to be able to have any kind of meaningful conversation with them, which is something which is best facilitated through direct action, which is why that's really the best tactic for figuring out how to overcome the differences between the left and the right, and between Republicans and libs and Democrats and everybody else. It's direct action. That's because you can demonstrate truths which resonate with people's core fundamental understanding of the world way easier than you can by trying to use words to talk about things that are in different languages that are never going to translate. We do not violate the law of non-contradiction, so we should be fine. Not violate the law, so we should be fine. Hmm. Planting seeds of doubt is one of my favorite ways to get to people. Absolutely, that's a fantastic tactic. Is just to get somebody to reflect on themselves just long enough that they become aware of maybe some cracks in their bricks, or a fracture in the foundation that later they'll pick at, that later they're going to think about, when they're sitting there in bed getting ready to go to sleep, and they're drifting off, that kind of lingering thought that just because that happens to me all the time, because I'm actually thoughtful and I care about understanding the world and understanding other people. So even though in a lot of cases I believe that I'm right, I walk away with a feeling that I'm pretty sure I'm right about this. I still always think about conversations where people are like, no, I'm pretty sure you're wrong, right? Because I want to consider that. I want to always consider the possibility that I can be wrong, because it's probably true. All of my experience in philosophy has taught me that I'm probably wrong about everything, and I just am used to that, right? I don't have this driving need usually to be right, and part of that is because I'm just so used to being proven wrong. Where I've read a philosophy, and it happened to me a lot when I was really first getting started, the first few years in my undergraduate. I would begin reading a book in philosophy, and I would just be so enwrapped in the ideas, and I would get sucked in, and I'd be like, yep, this is it. This is everything. This solves all of the problems. There are no flaws. there are no problems in this philosophy. This is it. And then a week later, I read something else, and I'm like, everything in that other book is completely bullshit. I cannot believe that I was so enamored. I cannot believe that I didn't realize that this was a problem, and then that was an issue, and that was all based on this false idea that didn't have any merit, and I should have been suspicious of that in the first place. But that's the kind of thing that takes practice. And being wrong a lot. Good. All right, so we're still ironing out the distinctions of truth and knowledge. So, this what I'm kind of talking about has to do with Zizek's Islands of Ideology, which there's a lecture that he gives. It from one of his books, but I haven't read the book. I've never read any of Zizek's books. Not because I don't have any desire to, but I just don't have any. But I have read lots of Zizek's work, but all very short articles, relatively, 2 or 3 pages or 10 pages or something like that. That's something that I can read in an hour or two, depending on how dense the philosophy is. And Zizek is actually not that dense. Most of it. Zizek, I found, is pretty accessible, except for when he's trying to get into economics or in communism. For some reason, when he starts to talk about communist ideas, his philosophy gets real dense, real fast. Yeah, this is an aside. Anyway, so if it's true, how does it work? If it's so if you were to make up a story in your head You don't even take the time to write it down. If you make up a story in your head about whatever kind of subject, doing whatever kinds of things that you can imagine in your head, that is knowledge. And that knowledge is true. Even though it doesn't correspond to real states of affairs in the world. And right, and obviously correspondence theory is obviously the wrong course of investigation. It was obviously a mistake in the first place. And this very simple idea disproves that, right? If you invent a story in your head with characters and with a plot, the things that you imagine, in however you imagine them, whether you use words to imagine them or you use pictures to imagine them, because people's brains work differently. If it comes to imagining a story, I'm the kind of person that I might use some imagery and I might think of images in my head, but what I'm putting down are words, right? What I'm thinking about is a succession of words that has a progression from beginning to end, that has an order, and that's linear. Right? But not everyone thinks that way. Not everybody imagines a story in the same kinds of ways. And however it is that you would go about imagining the story, that is true. And that is knowledge which is true. That you just cooked up. That out of nowhere, which corresponds to nothing. So we have to make some kind of distinction then. Right? Before we even worry about the distinction, the realization of this helps us understand how very unimportant truth really is for you going about your daily life. How little relevance truth has, actually. And the counter contrast for this is the Othello example. And I don't know the story of Othello well enough, so I might get some of the story wrong, because of all the Shakespeare's plays, it's one that I haven't read. But in the story, there's somebody who suspects that their wife is having an affair with somebody else. I believe that there is actually some reason for the husband to be suspicious, because the wife is fooling around. But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because Othello, or whoever it is that is the jealous husband, doesn't know. They don't have correspondence with any state of affairs in the world which gives them truth to let them know that there's some kind of an affair going on. But that doesn't matter. They don't need that. They have the suspicion, and they operate under the suspicion such that they take certain kinds of actions, right? Under with the belief that the affair is going on, and that the belief is pathological, in the same way that knowledge is authoritatively telling you what kind of things you can and cannot do, or what kind of things are good or bad. It directs you in a very powerful way. And belief directs you in the same kind of powerful way. In fact, in an unmistakably similar way, or in a way that you can mistake it. That's what I meant to say. In a way, when you look at somebody's behavior, you don't know if they have belief or if they have knowledge. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because they are still going to act the way they are going to act. Right? And that's where I was trying to get with the conversation with William of Orange, that people do what they want to do. That's it is a choice, it's a decision, and to the extent that we have any free will, what you do is what you want to do. Even if it's something that you'd rather not do, if you do it, you did want to. And you did want to because of social pressures, or because you stand to gain, or because if you don't, then you'll lose your job, or right there are reasons that you do things that you don't want to do, right? But if you do them, it turns out you cared enough about not losing your job, or not pissing off your friends, or whatever it is that has so compelled you. You limit your autonomy in very important ways, and you do so based on things that you believe to be true about the world. And so now we can take this belief and truth, and we don't have to fucking care about that anymore, right? Because it doesn't matter if the belief corresponds to actual states of affairs in the world. That doesn't matter. People are going to do what they're going to do. And that's the point. You can argue all you want to about different ways that you can discern the truth of certain states of affairs. But if other people don't believe it, it won't matter. Right? It turns out that belief, what we understand to be true, matters more about correspondence with true states of affairs in the world. That's what moves us, is what we believe about the world and how we understand the things that we believe. That's what moves us. That's what drives and compels us, not what is or not discernibly true about in some kind of factually can't be mistaken way, right? None of that matters, right? And this is actually the Descartes problem all over again. So when René Descartes was going through the process of trying to employ this categorical methodical skepticism, his contemporaries were saying, but it doesn't matter. it doesn't matter that you don't know that the world isn't real, right? Whether or not you're awake or dreaming, you will still starve, it turns out. In figuring out the true truthiness of that reality doesn't matter as much as the fact that if you don't eat, you will starve, right? And I think the example that they gave was that you're still expected to go to work, actually. That you might question whether or not the whole world exists, and whether or not the other people in the world are real, and whether that job is just a fiction or a figment of your imagination. But if you don't go to that job, you will get fired, right? And that's right there. You live in a material world, and you can question the certitude of that world, sure, but you still have to live in it. Practically speaking, and getting to the truth doesn't matter. And I think it's really funny that philosophy has this tendency to go through the same kinds of cycles over and over again, where it's like, no, we really need to solve this problem. It's really important. And it turns out it's not even that big of a problem. And that's why I'm a phenomenologist. Oh, Matt, I didn't see you come in. Welcome in, Matt. It's good to see you. I hope you're having a good day. That's why I ascribe to phenomenology as a practical metaphysics for understanding the world. Because whether or not there's body-mind dualism doesn't matter. Whether or not we can come to know any concrete truths about the world doesn't matter. We can just yeet those things out and just do practical things that matter to us. I'm trying to find a good spot to... That sun is not right there. It doesn't matter. As soon as I fix it, then some cat is going to be irritated that it's been fixed and push it back open. You may ask yourself, well, how did I get here? Yeah. Just like I said. Seconds. It took seconds for a cat to go, no, I'm upset with that being closed that way, and to push through it. Thanks, Lilith. Well, you know what's funny, Matt, is so I love that song. I'm a huge fan of the Talking Heads in general, and that song is actually really quite philosophically deep. For just it's absurdism, right? It is the absurdist awakening. It is realizing that you have been following along to a world of rules and orders, right? And these rules and orders have gotten you to this particular spot, and you didn't even have to be aware of any your existence or your free will or make any decisions. Life will just push you along and put you where it wants, right? You don't have to care about the responsibility of your free will or your determination or being an authentic, autonomous self. None of that matters. You can just, as the days go by, and that's it. You might ask yourself, right? And that's what the song is trying to get people to do. What the song is trying to get the listener to do is to ask them, stop singing the song and to actually ask themselves, right, how did I get here? Who put me here? Right? How did this happen? And you actually, you are to blame for your predicament. It was you all along. Got me thinking that naivety is actually valuable, I think, to Lenin's left-wing communism, an infantile disorder. Wait, I think to Lenin's left-wing communism, an infantile disorder. Which I actually haven't read. And though I don't disagree with him in it, I just disagree with the title even more because he is calling the left dogmatic, yet infantile does not fit that. Right? I would agree with that because what type of human learns as much and is not dogmatic other than an infant? Right. Actually, that is true. Infants usually keep a very open mind about most things. I think that analogy is a poor fit, as you point out, for just that reason. Because, well, infants also have a tendency to wonder. And that's something that's driven out of children as they grow older, is the ability to wonder about the majesty of the world, about and that's tapping into the sublime. So that's what I'm trying to get to. And this is one of the dangers of AI. One of the reasons I'm really upset about AI and it getting everybody just so addicted to their phones all the time, is because we are childlike wonder is one of the most important human inventions. It's necessary. And it is necessary in such an important way that I can't even begin to express how important childlike wonder is for humans, for humanity. And it's something that I think is somehow in danger. It is such a magical and powerful thing. It seems almost like it could not be, right? That's what has gotten us all of the things that we have, all of the good. It's what's gotten us here. But that it is, I think it's something which right now is at threat. That there is, and this is getting a little bit off topic, but I guess not. actually, now that I think about it, it's not at all off topic. That what I have a fear, and my fear is that we will cross a threshold where we've gotten too good at establishing for us a cohesive narrative. I fear that we are going the direction where we might cross, and it would be a technological, it would be a combination of technology and fascism draped in some kind of savior solution for eliminating poverty, or for eliminating crime, or for eliminating social dissent, or whatever, however it's cooked up, that will cross a threshold that we can't come back from, and that we will just become an ant-like civilization, a body of beings which don't have any kind of real autonomy or imagination, any kind of real choice or freedom or understanding of how to find those things. So I don't know. I don't know that it's something that can be completely. Maybe I'm just being hopeful. I don't know. Right? I'm going both ways. I'm at on one hand, I believe that there is no hope, and we're on this deterministic, on rails descent into something awful. And then on the other hand, I still have this overwhelming urge to want to find hope, and to believe in the ability for us to finally figure it out. I don't know. Yeah, techno-feudalism is there. Well, and that's why it's not off topic. Is that there is a potential. I don't know. My imagination's going nuts right now. Right, I'm thinking about installing computer chips into the brains of infants, and there are so many ways that we can go so wrong. And in that kind of reality, right? If we have automated systems, that's one of the things that I fear the most is automation. And this has to do with systemic institutionalization. I've talked about I'm sure I've brought up systemic institutionalization. It's the process by which certain ideas become assumed into certain structures, and those structures contribute to the building of a culture and society in such a way that these ideas become embedded into the bedrock of culture and society. Racism being a perfect example of that. The ideas of white privileged men who assumed certain things about nature because of the world that they had created. And in their assumptions, they determined in a very formal way truth, right? They wrote knowledge down in books, and other people picked up those books and took those books seriously enough that they taught them at universities. And these ideas are where you get your rights from, and what protects you from, constitutional oversight, what protects you from government interference, are ideas that were established by these old white men who made sweeping assumptions about the nature of truth and reality. Why was I going this direction? Oh, systemic institutionalization. So with the increasing rate of automated systems comes the increased rate of systemic institutionalization, where especially if we are using racist ideas to inform how we structure our justice system and how we structure our policing system and how we respond to poverty and to homelessness, right? With increased automation, these things become increasingly cemented into the foundations of culture and society. Whereas before, this was a slow, trudging, grinding thing that took place over decades in courts. Now it's just happening. Now it's happening just like this. Think about all of the technologies that we use, like Google and other kinds of engines, right? All of these engines that we know are designed by algorithms that are suspicious at best, right? That have lots of flaws that have been pointed out to time and time and time and time and time and time again, but it's already too late. All of these things have become institutionalized. And we're at a point now with a lot of these things that they're beyond good and evil. In the Nietzsche way, where rather than considering whether or how we fix the algorithms so that they're less sexist or that they're less racist or that they target children with autonomous weapon systems, rather than worrying about how we fix those bugs, we assume that those bugs are just a part of the system now. Right? Now that's just become a normal thing that people are adopting into how they understand the development of technology. Right? And this is systemic institutionalization. And in a decade from now, if nobody is paying attention and nobody is still shaking their fist about it, nobody will. Right? It'll just become an accepted thing. And we'll have to invent whole other new philosophies of understanding these things to crack into going back to that previous understanding to know that these things are bad in the first place, or to think to be critical about them to begin with, right? And there is a point past which we can automate too far. Right? If we have automated systems that begin taking care of children, for example, and teaching those children things about the world and morality and how to be a person, right? If we automate those and leave to AI or to television or to the internet or to whatever to teach our children how to be children, why would we be surprised when they have trouble thinking outside of the box or thinking of creative ideas about how they should be individually different and distinctly themselves? Right? We should not be surprised that people would rather just go along with the masses and do what's easy, because that's how culture and society has been built. Is that if you go along with the masses and do what you're told and keep your head down, then likely you'll be fine, as long as you're not in this minority group or in that minority group or whatever. We need to have another, right? So, ... Yes, the right can't be political, Kaimatara. I have tried to read that article so many times this week. I just, I wish that I could convey, really just how frustrating that has been for me, because I really want to read that article, and I want to read it more than the other article, which was the, there was another one that was before that I already wanted to read, but now I want to read that one more, and I still just have not had the chance. But I'm there now. So as a quick aside, while I'm already distracted, I'm kind of knocking on all of the wood surfaces I can find. I'm kind of caught up on school stuff. There are things that I can grade, and well, I'm not right. Let me qualify this some. So I've got one class that I've got lots of discussion boards to do in that class. It's the first week of class. I've got to respond to all 28 students which are in that class right now. And assuming that all 28 students make an initial post, I'll respond to all of them. And it's not just, hi, welcome to the class, F you. It's like, hi, thank you for telling me about your major. Thank you for telling me what you hope to gain out of this class. Let's talk about these kinds of specific things that deal with your profession or with your goals or with whatever, right? My job is to be there for the students and connect with the students and to get them engaged in the content. So that's what I'm doing for the next few days. But that's not something that is time sensitive. It's not something that requires it's not hard work. I just have to do it. And there's only so many students that I can respond to. They have until Thursday to make their initial posts. So most students will wait till the end of the day tomorrow anyway, before they make their initial post. So that, and I've got a few rough drafts to grade for some of my other classes that were already going on. I've got 2 rough drafts to read. So after stream today, my plan is to read those rough drafts, and then tomorrow, assuming that there are no emergencies or no problems, or that nothing breaks on the van, or that that nothing else comes up, tomorrow I will be able to actually sit down, get caught up on some of, because I've got a whole list of articles that I want to read. That one's on the top of the list. I completely forgot. It came. I won't be able to get to this book yet. I'm going to start with a Hannah Arendt book. That's going to be the next one that I crack into. But I wanted to show off this, that I did order the Zoe Baker's book, Means and Ends, from AK Press. It was a very conscious and deliberate purchase, and I say that because you can read Zoe Baker's book online for free. I should have looked up the link. But if you search for Means and Ends Zoe Baker, you can find the work you can read the whole book for free if you'd like to. But heads up, it's a lot thicker of work than I thought. It's 500, nearly 500 pages. Let's see. Well, that's the bibliography. If we cut out the notes and bibliography, $360 pages. It's on Anarchist Library. Yeah, it would be on Anarchist Library. There's a particular website that Zoe Baker specifically sponsors, and I just don't remember what it is. And it doesn't. I don't think that Zoe Baker really cares where you read it from. That's why that they made it available for free, and weren't worried about copyright, is because they're a true anarchist, right? Knowledge should be free. So Zoe Baker doesn't care where you read it, as long as you read it. Now, I recommend that you check it out. But I wanted to make that purchase and support Zoe Baker in that kind of way, because the book wasn't very expensive. I think it was $15 to get it directly from AK Press. Maybe I paid $16 or $17 after shipping. And it's a book that I love having physical books, right? That's digital books are okay. There is something to be said about it taking up no space, right? There's something to be said about yeah, the convenience of being able to have thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of philosophy in one file that just sits on my hard drive and doesn't take up any physical space. Because I have hundreds of books that and probably thousands of articles that I've got saved in various places all over the place. That so there's something to be said about the digital access. But I do appreciate a physical book, and I'm a notes taker. I write my books. And judge me if you want to, because I know that's for a lot of book lovers, bibliophiles. There are some bibliophiles who rage hate over writing in books, and I get it, but I write in my books. It's my book. It's my book. And I would like the notes to be in the book rather than adding 200 or 300 extra pages of footnotes or post-it notes. Would you rather me put post-it notes on the pages, bibliophile? Because I do that too. Because I do absolutely use post-it notes to mark certain places in the book. But those are the things that I do. I don't dog ear because that ruins the page. And that's a very big, very important, very distinct difference, right? Having some pencil in the margins of the pages doesn't diminish the ability to read the book. It doesn't make the book unreadable, and it doesn't damage the longevity of that book's existence. When you dog ears the pages of your books, you are ruining the book. You are destroying the book and making it more difficult for that book to survive over time. It does destroy the pages to dog ear them, which is why I use post-it notes. I think my next article will be on In the Defense of Uncertainty. That's where I'm going to, and it's going back to that point really quickly. Good, Kai Matara. When I was talking about revisiting platforming fascists, I'm not actually considering whether or not I'm gonna platform fascists, right? Because I saw Jane was like, no, never, never under any circumstances, right? And that's there is, like I said, good reason for us to take that kind of stance, but there is untold value in uncertainty, and not just in tactics and not just in the practical sense, but in the humility that's it's necessary for doing ethics. And this is one of the hardest lessons for me to teach in the classroom, because there's no literature on this specifically. It's the idea that it's important for one to be able to entertain the idea that they may need some correction, which is different than being wrong, right? Because people can entertain, in the abstract at least, and I think that's often sometimes a problem, is that people can entertain in the abstract that they can be wrong, but they don't actually believe that they can be wrong. So there's that distinction to be made too, which actually has to do with this truth knowledge problem that we've been talking about. We'll finish wrapping up that conversation soon. But there's a humility that's necessary in being a mature moral agent, and that involves understanding that sometimes you need correction. Sometimes it's good for you to be told by somebody else that you are out of line, or that you're misguided, or that you are mistaken. And it's not because you need to be wrong, but because this is an important dynamic. It's an important social exchange that we depend on as emotional moral beings, as emotional moral animals. right? This is a language that we depend on to be empathetic, kind, social creatures who are able to care about each other. And it requires a little bit of uncertainty and a willingness to embrace uncertainty to a large degree. And again, it's really it's one of those. It's what's making me think about it right now is on the discussion boards that I was reading yesterday and the day before. I had lots of students that are getting, that are having that aha moment where we've spent weeks now where they have reflected on themselves and they're being critical of themselves, and now they're figuring out how to assess others through a critical lens, but in a lens that is naturally also kind, and is also naturally seeking to understand and not trying to prove it wrong, right? But trying to actually see the viewpoints of the other students and how their understanding of the world is different in an important way, which helps them to understand how they understand in a more concrete, more substantive, more real way, right? In those differences, those differences are where we find the really meaningful, really important truth. And so it is really exciting when I have students that are like, wait a minute, bing, and you get to see the light bulb light up as they're typing, right? It's kind of cool. We still need to be able to identify and locate fascists. Absolutely. Also saying, I don't know, we don't fucking know. But we do need to be able to identify and locate fascists. That's hey, don't forget your medication, everyone. If it's if you medicate, now is a good time to enjoy your medication. Smoke them if you got them, if you want to. I mean, I've got them and I don't want to smoke. It's, as I've talked about before, sometimes cannabis is really helpful in diving into philosophy. Sometimes I've had it be helpful for me to focus on a particular kind of philosophy to get real stoned. In fact, the first time that I read Foucault, Power/Knowledge, it was me and a whole bag of cannabis, and we got through it together. But it's difficult for maintaining multiple trains of thought, which is necessary for streaming, because I have to keep up with not just chat, I have to keep up with different conversations that I'm having with different chatters at different times, and I have to do that while I'm trying to grapple with the philosophical concepts, while I'm also trying not to violate TUS, right? There's some things that that require some mental acuity, and cannabis does interfere with juggling mentally many things at once. For me, anyway. So, but feel free, everybody else, to imbibe as you would like. So, oh, we need to identify the fascist. Yes. And this is, what do I want to say about this? The difficulty with the goal, with the end, with the telos, there we go. The difficulty with the telos of identifying fascism or fascists, especially, and well, let's say fascist ideas or tendencies, rather than trying to find people or thinking about fascist subjects as being disclosable, being identifiable in that kind of way, as necessarily attached to a fascist, right? We should be able we should be more concerned with identifying fascist ideologies or fascist tendencies in our own selves or in our organizing, even if the people themselves aren't right. That's got to make that distinction. But we do need to have a way of doing so. But how do I articulate it's a problem of loophole. That's part of the part of the problem. The part of the problem is we have a finite definition that we make up about this. These are the behaviors, right? And if that's what we do, we're making the structuralist approach. And in the structuralist approach, we're missing material reality, and that we run the risk of people being fascist in ways that we didn't expect, or that we haven't anticipated and hasn't been written about in philosophy before, right? And I don't think that's what you're trying to advocate, Jane, right? I'm not saying that that's what you're advocating, but with the problem, with that telos in mind, that we want to be able to root out and identify ideas which are fascist. If that's what we care about doing, we have this truth problem where we need to figure out what people or what behaviors or what actions or what ideas qualify. But in so doing, we are formalizing ideas that might exclude material realities that should be considered. What was the other side? There's the other side of this. Fuck. The one side is the other side is that we close ourselves off. Is that we there's some psychology here, which granted is not necessarily the case, but the psychology seems to be kind of true. So there's this thing that people do, racism. Let's talk about racism for a minute. There's this thing that people do, white people, and I've mentioned this before. White people are often much more concerned with appearing racist than they are with actually being racist. And this reality comes from a culture and society that, right, we have the movies like Indiana Jones, right, punching the fascist, punching the Nazi. And we have movies like Star Wars that tell us that the Empire is bad. We have these cultural ideas that give us an idea of what villains look like. And what happens is there's an ideological distancing that people undergo when they identify a villain, some kind of villainous idea or trope or whatever, some subject which is villain. When they do, they distance themselves as far from that as they can. The problem is it makes people blind to characteristics that they have that are like the villain. Right? So this is a Jungian idea where we associate bad or evil or undesirable, and we associate qualities with those things, and we look at them from a distance. And anything that we see reflected in ourselves, we hide. We hide from culture and society, from our friends and from our family, and ultimately we hide it from ourselves, because those are not qualities that you can display, because they are villainous. And so people will have these traits and just completely overlook them. And it's a form of strategic ignorance, is another, and that's why racism is one of the best ways to illustrate this, is that people will go out of their way to not appear racist, despite the fact that they don't actually take care to not do or say racist things, hence us having a white supremacy society, right? That's the society that we have, and we have that society because people keep remanufacturing that society with their words and their actions. That's the reality. But part of the problem is the people that are taking part in recreating the structures of society that maintain the system of white supremacy identify those characteristics as villainistic, as evil and bad and undesirous. And they don't want to be that, so they pretend that they're not. And this is living in bad faith. There's lots of philosophical ideas that comport with this, that fit into this idea. That it's, i.e. virtue signaling. Yes, absolutely. It's why optics can be seen as a privilege. That I hate, I've talked about this before, I hate even bringing it up. I hate optics discourse, and I hate that at some point I've had to engage with it at all. And I think I talked about this on last stream too, that avoiding optics is also neglecting one's material conditions. So you should consider and you should care about optics, but you're 100% right about this. Is optics is absolutely a concern for privileged people. It's a privilege take. It's your primary concern. It's how you're perceived rather than what you actually do. It suggests that the worst you have to lose is your reputation, something intangible rather than something materially significant. Right, absolutely. I cannot agree with that statement more. That's absolutely true. Right, and so this is a very important tie-in to the overall conversation that we're having about truth, because so we're still talking about this distinction of truth and knowledge, so that we can finally get to get past this. One of the things that we lie to ourselves about the most is ourselves, specifically. And for this reason, that we don't want to be bad. We don't want to be evil. We don't want to be wrong. We don't want to be, right? We are uncomfortable with these kinds of things because society routinely punishes those. And we know through experience, right? And this is precognitive. But before you make judgments about the world, this is an emotional state which interferes with your ability to make judgments about the world. That you understand you are a being in a world of others, and those others are going to give you negative and positive feedback. This is, I've talked about attention before, right? We often think about our attention as this spotlight that we focus in on particular things whenever we're looking at the thing, or when we're considering it. We think of our attention as the spotlight of the thing that is within the scope of our focus. But that's not actually what your attention is doing. What your attention is doing right now is blocking out all of the sense data with which you are constantly being bombarded. All of the colors, all of the sounds, all of the feelings, right? The way that your clothes are on your skin is something that you begin to process in a way naturally and habitually and unconsciously. You filter out these things unconsciously without the deliberate thought that I need to stop thinking about the picture and that painting and my clothes in the closet and all. You can't focus on all the things. You can only focus on a few things at once, right? And what your attention is doing is helping block out all of the other ideas and all of the other stuff so that your focus can remain focused on what's important for you, for your survival. And this is something that your body naturally does. And it is an emotional response to the world in which you are. And you do this emotionally with the people around you, right? And again, you regulate yourself and your ideas about what you are and who you are, and the way that you feel about these things interfere with your judgments about things that you believe to be true about you, right? And so it becomes very difficult for us to understand our own identities without lots of conscious, deliberate effort, without going back to the song, right? Well, how did I get here, right? This is this realization or this absurdist awakening is something that you should be engaging with all of the time whenever you're making any kind of moral decision. And spoiler alert, literally every decision that you make is a moral decision. Well, not literally. Sometimes I run into that problem in the classroom too, when I make that claim, because I can't back that claim up. All things that you do are ethical issues. Not all things that you do are necessarily moral issues. There's some distinction there, and if anybody needs clarification on that distinction, we can just make that real fast. Yes. See, and this is, yeah, you are on the right track. Absolutely, Jane. People make the mistake that there is a fact that they know about the world and that this fact is true, right? And that this is a static thing. And that's not really how truth works, is that we know the fact and know that the fact is true. Truth is a process that we engage with in our active being. And this goes back to the conversation that we were having on last stream about the fact that all of the actions that you make are actions that you want to make, right? So what we should do for that, right, for that concern, is we need to look at this idea of want. What do we mean when we say want in the statement, you always do what you want to do, right? Because then we've got these other concerns like addiction, or we've got concerns like I'm going to lose my job, right? Social pressures or material pressures. So we've got to figure out how we figure out want in a framework in which I would posit the reality is freedom doesn't exist. We don't live in a state of affairs where any one of us really has any real freedom. For the reasons that we've talked about a number of times on the stream. So how do we determine want? Right? It seems almost like we need one of those, like the idea that Jane had with freedom, right? Freedom Jane had said previously, is the opportunity to be able to opt out or disassociate with systems, right? That's what real freedom is, and that's definitely on the right track to understanding freedom. And I think that we would need to understand want in this same kind of way, right? It would have to be a choice among choices, which we weigh through the process of belief to be worth while, to be worth the cost, or to be worth whatever energies will be necessary to accomplish that end, right? That's as good as we get from want. It's not really about what you want to do, because the way that we think about want implies freedom. It implies that we have a choice, implies that we get to opt out, right? Which in a lot of the cases when we're talking about what we actually do in the real world, we don't get the option to opt out, right? And I think about this an awful lot because I have a lot on my plate all the time. Every day I wake up and I have a whole lot of things to do every day. And the things that I have to do are necessary, right? So far as doing my job. But there's a lot that can be unpacked here, because I do have the choice to not do the things. That is actually within my freedom. I have the choice to decide not to grade the assignments. I have the choice, or we can talk about what it means to do my job, because I could stop doing discussion boards and go back to just doing quizzes and exams and not have to worry about grading stuff every day. My job was a whole lot easier when I would stand in front of the classroom and talk for a little bit, and I would collect their quiz at the end of the day, check off their attendance, and be done, and not care about whether the students are comprehending the material, and not care whether the students are understanding that these things can affect their life and might improve their ability to improve their station in life. Or to actually pursue real happiness, right? Those are the kinds of things that they can get from my course, and I could just not give a shit about those things. I have the freedom to not care. I could go back to just making the class really easy, and everybody who shows up and just proves that they read more than 8 words, it can check mark, and I could do that. Well, theoretically, I'm not the kind of being, I'm not the kind of person that really can make that choice. Actually, right there are. And there are ways that we might push this. And I'm not sure if this analogy is going to land well with everyone, but this is something that applies to me. I have a hard time preparing food for myself that I'm going to eat in a messy kitchen. So if I go into the kitchen to make myself a sandwich, for example, I will do the dishes and put the dishes away if they're in the dish drain, and wipe down all of the counters and clean everything in the kitchen so I can make a sandwich. Now, I have put this to the test. I have, on occasion, decided, you know what? For whatever reason, right? Sometimes I have a lot of work to do, right? And the schoolwork that I have to do, I weigh more heavily, right? This is something that I'm not going to just give up. And then I can say, well, this thing that I ordinarily insist upon, right? Which is a very true thing for me. That's how I live my life. I don't prepare food in a dirty kitchen, right? But it's not always necessarily true, because sometimes I do when the situation requires, when I'm really busy with schoolwork, or if I need to run out the door real fast and help somebody with moving, or if I've got an appointment that I've got that I'm late for, right? There are a number of reasons why I might compromise on those certain kinds of values. But that doesn't make those values any less true for me, really. Or does it, right? To what degree is that a flexible thing, or is that a choice? Because there's always some other kind of consideration which supersedes. I'm not going with my wants. I'm not, choosing from among a bunch of free options. My time is valuable, and I only have so much of it. And certain things have to get done in a certain time. And I'm going to prioritize certain things based on states of affairs in, my classes and my regular life. That the need dictates what I do more than me making any decisions about how I'm going to go about doing the things that I do on a regular day. I do what needs to get done when it needs to get done. And to what degree am I free in any of those regards? This want should be distinguished from need as well. Right. Good. Because we've got the prudence is what I would say. There is it's kind of like the difference between aesthetics and prudence. And these things can come together and have concurrence. Right. So, and that's like, you need a dresser, or rather, maybe you don't, but if you need a dresser, that is a prudent way to store your clothes. You could also get a dresser that looks good, right? So you can mix the two concepts, but they're not like, you don't get the dresser for the aesthetics. Generally, though, I mean, I imagine that there are some people that make those kinds of decisions, and that would be a want, right? Somebody that just buys a bureau or a dresser because they like the aesthetic, that would be a want, right? That's not something somebody who's operating under constraint of need necessarily. Well, I even so, as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, well, I don't know this person and what kind of needs they have, or what kind of situation they find themselves in. Right? Maybe there's always more nuance to be had there. But that's an important distinction between want and need, and prudence usually is more in accord with meeting our needs. Right. And I'm trying to think of this in a purely biological way now, about like, because you need to eat, right? And I think that we don't run afoul any paradoxes or any misunderstanding or misuse of language by saying you need to eat something at some point, right? Maybe there's more room for clarification there, or qualifiers, but to eat is a need, and that is a prudential affair. It is what you do because that's what needs to be done. It's the most prudent thing is to feed yourself. Stanley Cup collectors as well. Well, there's something about that though. So, think, I almost think of it as like, compulsion. what is it that I'm trying to get into? Yeah, compulsion's not the right word, but I mean, a compulsion. Often people display a compulsion, kleptomania, right? Is a compulsion to steal. Am I using that word wrong? I feel like I'm using that word wrong. What does that word actually mean? And instead of me just guessing, let's just ask Google what compulsory means. Am I using this word wrong? No, that doesn't look like I'm using. But it is. This is going back to but it is. I am using it right, but I'm using it wrong-ish. I'm using it right, but I haven't bridged the gap yet. Impetus, ethos, that which informs the thing itself. Ethos is that which informs the thing itself. And people that have a spending addiction, I think, is an example of this, where there is a compulsion, and that compulsion is partially internal and partially external, right? That compulsion has two parts to it. That the compulsion is tied to something outside of the self. And that thing outside of the self has to do with possibly with self-image, or with possibly a sense of community, or possibly a sense of self-worth. These are different kinds of ways that one seeks out validation in the world. But there would also be the, how do I get back to the, there would also be the internal aspect which informs, right? The compulsory part is that it's tied to fundamental identity. It's tied fundamentally to the being's being by their own accord, but by their doing. It's also the autonomy thing. In the by that I mean that you don't leave the house without clothes is something that you do to interfere with your freedom to leave the house without clothes. You choose not to on purpose because there are repercussions, social repercussions, possibly legal repercussions for leaving the house without clothes. So you are what interferes with your freedom to do so, not culture and society. You have the freedom. That belongs to you. You have the freedom. You choose to give that up for whatever reason, right? And that's, you are limiting your own autonomy. And other things limit your autonomy too, in this way. And those things that limit your autonomy are also compulsory. There we go. But it's still always a relationship. It's still always a relationship that's both, right? And so when we think about compulsory, what we think is somebody who is using physical force to force somebody to do something that they don't want to do. But that's not what compulsion really. Compulsion is. It's a relationship that involves you ceding, you giving, you relenting, you acquiescing. It requires you to do to some extent. See, it's similar to body dysphoria. Could you could you unpack that a little bit, Jane? I would like to see what you mean by that. I think I know what you mean, but there's a lot of other different things that you could mean, and they're all actually very interesting. Similar to body dysphoria. Okay. Right. So, yes, because body dysphoria isn't just about you, right? And I think this is part of it. That reminds me. There's an article that I want to post. This is a side. Where is it? I've got to collect my thoughts because I'm shifting gears to a completely different thing. So I was reading this article for my class, and it's an article that I've read over and over and over again. But it occurred to me that I bet you all would really love this article, and I don't think I've shared it yet. And so I'm going to post this in the Discord right now while I'm thinking about it. Oh, dysmorphia, not dysphoria. Oh, to body dysmorphia. Right. Okay. Now I'm tracking. Now I'm verifying to see what meaningful distinctions remain between the two. Because I was going on with the dysphoria. Dysmorphia, I think, obviously. No, I mean, yeah, no, absolutely, obviously. But I think there might be something to the dysphoria too. But anyways, not anyways, but now I want to share this. It's by Talia Bettcher, Betther. Feminist perspectives on trans issues. And I got this from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. So it's the kind of thing that it's not difficult to access. Anyone can go find it, but I'm going to put it in the Discord anyway. Because I think that you all would really get a kick out of this. Well, let me put it. No, yeah, I'm going to put it in general. No. I'll put it here in books, articles, and academic work. Drag and drop. Oh, there we go. Called the phenomenology of trans bodies. And one of the things that I really like in it is there are some substantive pushbacks against Judith Butler. And for those of you who are long-time followers know that I am a big fan of Judith Butler. They are brilliant, and their work on ethics and gender and a lot of other subjects has just been really fantastic. But the the stance that Judith Butler has championed for a very long time is one that science is really contending against awfully hard. By that I mean Judith Butler argues that what gender is purely social construct. It is a matter of expression. It is a matter of how one navigates through the world, and it is a truth that one uses to navigate through the world in all of the powerful, important ways that we would talk about all of these other things that we've been talking about. There is some trans feminism in there, yes. But the limits that we find, or rather let's not talk about the limits. That's less important. There how do I crack it? Right. The way that Judith Butler phrases the discourse around the social construction of gender requires that gender be entirely malleable for those who express it and for those who use that to navigate the world, which is all of us. All of us necessarily do. We live in a gendered world. And there's a whole lot of Judith Butler that's spot on, and we don't have to critique it all. And that's one of the assertions that Judith Butler makes. And no notes there. We live in a gendered world, necessarily. And gender awareness is necessary for you to navigate the world. Necessary. Even if you decide to nihilistically reject gender and you are a gender abolitionist of the most staunch belief, so that you believe that you actually have no gender, it's still a reaction that you have had to a gendered world that you still need to navigate through, of necessity. So those truths, capital T truth, are necessarily true. But the thing that we lose, or the thing that we miss out on, is that there is a way that we feel about being in the world. And that has a natural biological component to it. And it seems, as science and a lot of scientific studies are coming to find out now, that our understanding of our own sexuality and gender are informed by a lot of complex, emotional, but also biologically coded parts of us. Not in the way that we could necessarily find a gay gene or a trans gene, because that's not the way that genes work, right? That whole idea of mapping the human genome, as it turns out, it was way too optimistic in our understanding of what could be understood about genetics. That's not to say that we can't at some time isolate the hundreds or thousands of alleles that all contribute to the expressions that are going to be determined. But as of yet, we are far short, and probably won't get anywhere closer in our lifetimes to that kind of biological understanding of how our DNA structures translate into the emotional felt beings that we become. But there is substantive pushback against the idea that of Judith Butler's that gender is something that we can choose, right? And that's kind of what and the reason why I thought it was appropriate to tie it in is because that's kind of necessarily, actually, what not kind of, it's necessarily what Judith Butler is proposing. Is that this is antithetical to the way that we were talking, that Slavoj Žižek was talking about gender, right? And that the trans people who are undergoing the process of being trans, those people don't have a choice, right? In Slavoj Žižek's consideration, in the way that he describes it, is that for them to be authentically true to themselves, they must engage in these activities, and they must, that's their mode of being, is being authentically that. And it's not a matter of choice. Really, it's necessary. Gender is based around schema. Gender cannot be assigned for us. That is, I think, one of the most important takeaways, and something that I still don't get to talk about in my ethics class. I mean, no, I do, actually. I manage to bring it up usually, to cram it in edgewise, but I bring it up in the way that I'm usually venting my frustration about not getting to focus on that. Because when we start to talk about trans issues in the classroom, most people are very respectful. It helps to have a they, them in front of the classroom that has the power and authority to give them an F, right? So most people engage with ideas around transgenderism respectfully in my classroom, but there are concerns that people bring up, right? And they're concerned about the associations to mental health. They're concerned, right, not with regard to the social pressures of society that doesn't allow laws which permit their existence, right? We don't want to entertain that. We were just looking for this correlation between being trans and suicides and depression, and authenticity. We spend a lot of time talking about authenticity. And we've talked now about how we come to be informed as the beings that we are through the influence of our moral communities. And we've talked about the conflict of determinism and free will in the classroom. But one of the things that we don't get to focus on, that I bring up at the end of the class, when I'm ranting at the end of the class about the things that frustrate me about it, is that I talk about that we assign genders all the time. And we assign genders for lots of outliers. So when we look at the number or the distribution of trans people in populations, one of the things that we find is that there are significant differences in the expression of trans people in a population. And a large part of this we're coming to find out, and this is not coming to find out, this is about a decade old news, is because doctors for about 200 or 300 years now have taken it upon themselves when some child is born and things aren't clear. The doctor takes it upon themselves to assign at birth some kind of gender. In a lot of cases, historically, hundreds of thousands of children that this has happened to, sometimes the parents aren't even informed. Right? We've got a whole bunch of people who are bent out of shape because they're concerned about doctors performing irreversible surgeries on 16 and 17-year-olds, which doesn't happen anywhere. But people are absolutely bent out of shape about doctors performing irreversible surgeries on trans children who would like to identify as differently. But nobody gives a shit about hundreds of thousands of surgeons, baby deliverers, just taking upon themselves to assign people, trans people who were born with complicated genitalia or complicated reproductive organs, taking upon themselves to decide for that person, and sometimes doing so without the consent of their parents. And that's a real thing that's been going on for a very, 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 very long time, right? Shouldn't we be trying to pass laws about that shit? That is actually a thing, that we have doctors who are actually performing irreversible surgeries on children's genitalia as soon as they're fucking born? Make it make sense, right? The dissonance of our cultural idiocy is just staggering. That all these Christians want to get bent out of shape over this dumb shit over here, when it's just a few people who are trying to live their life. And the point of this that I'm getting to is that we have seen some populations where the trans representation in that population is as high as 26%. I mean, think about that reality. I mean, that's kind of an outlier in those kinds of communities where the percentage is that high. But it makes you wonder, when there are significantly less trans people in the United States, and there have been significantly less trans people in the United States than, say, other industrialized European nations, where their culture and society views those things less strictly. With and I mean, I know that England is turf island. They're at least as bad as us. It's not a competition. But it's just we don't get to have the real conversations. We don't get to have the conversations that we should be having. Is that there is a long-standing practice, and doctors are still doing that thing right now today, where an intersex child is born and a doctor just goes, "Oops, nature made a mistake. Let me fix that." And they take it upon themselves to perform surgeries on newly born humans. And again, in many cases, without consulting the parents. Right, so we've gotten a little bit off topic, but that's okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Circumcisions are already, in my opinion, terribly immoral. What are you thinking? That's genital mutilation. But that's right. So systemic institutionalization. There is a point where systemic institutionalization goes too far, and we no longer question things. Now, with circumcision, it wasn't adopted as a global practice. If circumcision of phalluses had become a global phenomenon and cultures all over the globe had started to do it, then we might be in that kind of situation where people just no longer think to question it anymore. But we didn't cross that threshold. Hang on. One of my dogs is one of the dogs is just howling. So it's hard for me to concentrate on anything when the dog is howling. Let the dog get its howl out, and now I can move on. Oh, truth and knowledge. Right, so we're starting to really, I think, get into it. We've covered enough of the concepts and ideas, I think, now that we can begin to make sense of the problems of truth and knowledge. And by the problems of truth and knowledge, I'm specifically talking to our incessant need to identify truth as it corresponds with states of affairs in the world in some kind of concrete way that we can put into some kind of definition. We need to stop that. We need to stop trying. We need to understand, as Hegel already figured out. And that's one of the reasons why this endeavor is, it's really silly that so many people are still caught up in it, because Hegel pretty much concretely has had this conversation, right? If we follow down the road of skepticism or along the road of structuralism, when we have these rails and we are using these rails as the mechanism by which we understand truth and knowledge in the world, then what we are going to find ourselves doing is we will be walking along this path, and along one side of the path will be this gaping abyss of no meaning, and we will be systematically identifying things that we just toss into the abyss, and we will continue to walk along the path looking at the things and then tossing them into the abyss continually. And Hegel says, rather than walking along the edge of that abyss looking for the truth, we should recognize that we have already found it. The truth is that there is no truth to be had there. That's the takeaway that we should get from systematic skepticism and structuralism, is that there is no truth to be had there. And then it doesn't matter, because things still are important to you. You value those things, you will pursue those things, and you will still find meaning in doing that. Cool. Right? You don't need the capital T truth over here that corresponds with your beliefs. What we need to understand is that you have beliefs about the world, and you use those beliefs to navigate the world as though they are true. And that's all you really need. That's as much understanding of truth that we need to grasp there, with regard to you and your free will and your ability to interact in the world with the world. This doesn't help us resolve the problem, the Zizek problem of the islands of ideology that we find ourselves in. And this is the problem, again, going back to when you're having a conversation with your conservative whatever, with some conservative person online. It seems as though there's a language barrier, because there literally is. And it's not that you're not using the right words, it's that you're using different rules for understanding what those words are and how those words work with each other. And the rules are so completely different and what Zizek describes is they are islands of ideology that don't touch in any meaningful, real, substantive way the conceptual ideas which are beyond them, right? And conservatism is, I think, a really good example of this kind of thought. But it's the dynamics are so much more interfolded. How do I expand it out? Because right now we're just playing with ideologies that we think are frameworks for understanding political participation. We need to understand how truth comes to be formed by those islands of ideology. No. We need to come to understand the ways in which the structure of society has caused alienating gaps of understanding between those islands of ideology. That's the Zizek problem. That it's such a big fucked up problem that that really nobody's. I mean, I say nobody's working on it. There's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of philosophers who are ravenously consuming as much and processing as much as they can to work in that way. Yes. And this is the postmodern problem. Yes, Jane. It's that we can't get the right meaning from the pop culture and the art and the things that are supposed to inspire in us things. Art doesn't have the kind of power and pull people nowadays will argue. And this is something that we've talked about on the stream before. And it's because there's either an erosion of meaning with regard to the substance of certain icons or archetypes, archetypes, that's the right word. Or the archetype becomes so inundated with meaning and content that it ceases to have meaningful content. And that's the postmodern problem, is that all of the tools, all of the tools that we use for understanding the world and for understanding each other and for figuring out what we're supposed to do with regards to our organization in a moral way, right? We are supposed to be using our words as tools to build a moral world. That's what we are supposed to be doing. We cannot, because the tools that we come to depend on can't do the job. And they can't do the job because of the backdrop of the loud overabundance of meaning that gets crammed into certain archetypes, or the other archetypes that end up being devoid of any kind of meaning or content or substance. So that's where we are. This was supposed to be quick. I thought that I was going to be able to do the truth and knowledge thing in less than an hour. I foolishly thought to myself, well, we've been going for 2.5 at this point. We are probably not going to get to the video, which is okay. I don't mind starting the stream on Friday, just kind of like last stream where I was like, we just need to start with the video. We need to get the video started. Thank goodness, because it took me hours to get through that video. I hope the Anarch won't be that way. Well, actually, I hope it will. That's great content. What am I saying? I hope that there are hundreds of places where I want to stop and just talk exhaustively about them. Right. So, but let's make sure that we've got this wrapped up. What was the other thing that oh, we're drawing that out so that we can get to the free will, determinism, and anarchism. Because we have to bring the conversation full circle back to the disagreement that that we were having with William of Orange on the last stream. And it's there's a distinction that I should make, that I should have made then, that I missed, and the distinction has to do with circular logic, which is one of the things that that William of Orange brought up, is that they thought that what I was arguing was circular logic. And that should, at that point, I should have taken the opportunity to unpack. But again, at that time, I was tired. And I didn't want to do a whole bunch of other things. I was trying to make my point so that I could make my other point, which I forgot about again anyway. But now the other thing is the appropriate thing for us to do anyway. And that's for us to it's not circular logic, and still, but there is a kind of tautology to be found here, where yeah, it's a tautology. It's a tautology. That's not the right way to say the words. It is something which becomes the case. Ugh. How do we phrase it? Right. So let's make it simple. The actions that you do are things that you want to do, right? That's what we're talking about. Always. The actions that you do are always things that you want to do. And it's not circular logic, but there is a tautology here. And the tautology comes in because of categories, because of categorical understanding, because of deductive reasoning, because of deductive reasoning, because categories are true of the world, and they have to be necessarily for our understanding of the world to be true. We understand things categorically, right? And this is Immanuel Kant. It is the case that you understand the world categorically. And when I say this word categorically, it means like 8 different things all at the same time, all that need a whole bunch of unpacking. It must necessarily be the case, right? The way that you perceive time is a category of your perception. That's what I mean. We understand the world categorically. How you understand the relationship of maths and how numbers and quantities relate to each other is a categorical understanding of the world that you have. They're right. Okay. I don't know what you believe. and you can tell me in words what you believe, and that still doesn't change my knowledge. I don't know what you believe, and you can tell me in words any number of things about what you believe that you want to, but that doesn't change my knowledge about your beliefs in the real important fundamental way that would matter in a substantive way in how I live my life, in that belief translates into practical expression in the real world. But when you express your beliefs through your actions as a being navigating through the world, I cannot doubt your beliefs about the world. I'm on one hand waiting for the point to sink in, but I'm on the other hand making sure that my point actually makes sense and that it I'm testing the thing that I've said for internal inconsistencies. And this idea that I just expressed, right? That I don't know what you believe. And no number of words will change the knowledge about my knowledge about your belief. But when I watch you act and live as a being in the world, I cannot doubt about the things that you believe that I experience when I watch you move through the world. This is a tautology. That this is the point that I'm trying to get across here. That and this is right, and this isn't proof of the thing that I'm trying to express either. This is just one way of trying to express the idea. Right. So I haven't made the whole point. Right, that example that I've given is an expression of the idea that I'm trying to get at with regard to, first off, the distinction between belief and knowledge. Maybe that's a better distinction than the truth and knowledge. Though that's semantics, right? It depends on how you understand those words and what you understand the difference of those words to be. So me saying I believe that evolution is true means nothing. Well, kind of. So, means. What do we mean by means? Right? When we say that it means nothing, it is not the case that it means nothing to you. This is good. Thank you, Jane. This is a perfect example. It is not the case that it means nothing to you. Right? But I don't know that. That's the difference of Gnosticism or versus doxa. Right? I can understand by either a social conception or because you've told me. But that's knowledge that I gained through doxa, which isn't knowledge that I have. The experiences of the world, that when you touch fire is hot. That's a Gnostic experience that I've had that I can't doubt. Right? That has a sublime truth to it that I don't question, because it's a truth about the world that I have experienced firsthand. What you believe about whether fire is hot is not something that I can know. But when I see you move through the world and avoid touching fire, I can I can have some kind of surety that there is a correlation, that you hold a belief about fire, and that has some kind of meaning and relationship to how you live your life. That it does mean something. It's not an idea in the abstract. And evolution is a really good example to contrast fire and not touching fire, because there's not a practical application that I can see you doing in the real world, which informs me in a Gnostic kind of way that you have a real concrete belief, right? And I think that we need to start using belief in the more concrete way. Belief is more akin to the thing that we call truth when it comes to informing us in our actions and our motives in our trying to seek a better moral world. Beliefs are what inform those things, not truth. Right? I think that we've kicked that horse to death. How should I act to show you that I believe? How should I act? Right? And that's what I'm considering, right? Is that there's not, right? Even if, like, so say that you were to decide to go to university and to study and to write research papers proving that evolution is a real thing. Right? And you might say, well, that's evidence that that person believes in evolution. But somebody else might also say, well, it sounds to me like they don't believe that it exists, because they're out there trying to disprove that, because that's the scientific method, is through the process of disproving rather than confirming truths. Right? So there's some unsurety there. And I think that unsurety is fine. That's where it comes to us engaging meaningfully with others in praxis, in direct action, so that we can see the ideals and values of others played out in how they interact with the world in meaningful ways for meaningful ends. And I think that it going back to when I was like, well, what do we mean by mean? At the end of the day, whether evolution is a capital T truth that's really true or not of the world doesn't matter, and is not going to importantly inform how you decide to go about living your life, right? And that's the same thing as the recycling kind of example. It's that's not what I wanted to say. What I wanted to say is, if we contrast this with the recycling example, there we go. If we contrast a belief in evolution with a belief in recycling, right? Well, I guess I'm just going back to the fire example. I haven't made any progress. I'm just reusing the same thing. Right. No, that's what I wanted to go to, was that we have to go back to Wittgenstein and accept that we don't know that other people are playing by the same rules as us. Right? That's where we go. Right? That's the next step, is that we have to understand that we don't have any assurance. We don't get any guarantees that other people are operating under the same rules of understanding or the rules of reason or rationality that we are operating under. And for us to find that out, we have to do the direct action. Absolutely, Matt. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you for stopping by and hanging out. Yeah, I'll probably be wrapping it up soon anyway. And it's not because I'm not enjoying this conversation. I really am. It's just that I keep thinking about how close I am to being done with the school stuff that I have. And I'm like, I could just get that done so that I can enjoy my day tomorrow. So I'm being a little bit selfish if I'm being honest. But I probably will not stream for that much longer. I'll probably wrap it up in about 10 or 15 minutes is what I'm thinking. I'm a woman. Do you believe that I'm a woman? Yes. Yes. And see, this is good. That's a really good example that we do. And that brings us back to Judith Butler, right? In that I can see your expression. I see the way, I've seen your PFP. I've seen your profile picture. I've seen the way that you talk about your womanness in the chat. And the way that you are quick to defend that if you think that womanhood in general is something that's under assault. Right? That's something that you demonstrate with how you are and with your being. You do. And it's really cool that I get to see that expression even though I don't get to see you. Right? And so it's kind of one of those interesting things where I'm not looking at your body as it moves through the world. I don't get that opportunity. But you are a body that's in the world, and you do affect the world by putting words in chat. And those words convey certain ideas. And that it's not simply, right? When you make this statement, I am a woman, right? That is that by itself is not sufficient by any means. But it's a culmination of lots of other things, right? That's the cherry on top of the big, massive cake of sense data experience I have of being in a world in which you cohabitate, right? I'm in the world, viewing the world, and you happen to be in the world, moving about the world, viewing the world too. And I get to see some of your influence on it. And I get to make judgments about your how you navigate the world. And among those judgments that I've made is that I agree with your statements, right? And there is this is where we might actually want to throw Kai Matara, who's actually put a bunch of stuff in chat. This is where we might want to throw that uncertainty back in. Not for the sake of skepticism, but for the sake of that we should understand of other subjects, that those subjects are never ours, right? What I believe about Jane doesn't determine Jane. In any meaningful sense. That doesn't mean that I can't say mean or hateful or hurtful, insensitive things that might affect Jane in various ways, right? But what I mean is, we should never have our minds made up about what others are, who others are, how others are. That's part of the problem of culture and society right now, is that we have lots of people in positions of power who believe that they understand the lived experiences of other people better than those people do. And that's a problem, is that anyone would take it upon themselves to make certain assumptions and then turn those assumptions into assertions about how other people are in the world, which is the reality that we live in, is that we have people who believe that they have the right and the authority to determine for other people how the world is for them. I think another issue that people treat truth as static thing. But as everything with the universe, it's always in motion and thus subject to change. It's true that the sky is blue. I think that is why there's a lot of dogmatism, because people treat truth as stagnant. And it is true that the sky is blue is a really good example, because the blue is always different and changing, and sometimes it's way more orange or way more green. Green sunsets is a thing that I'm still waiting to see out here. Apparently I've heard that people see green sunsets out here, and I haven't seen one yet. Sky is blue for now, but in a few hours it won't be, right? And it's so awesome that you had put all of this in chat as I was trying to bring up your earlier point about uncertainty, right? That we shouldn't assume that we can know all of the things, or that there are concrete boundaries or categories that we can put on other people. And so that's when we think about our understanding of the world, we should understand that we understand the world categorically. That is the way you perceive time, how you understand the relationship of numbers. These are categories of your perception. What I think that humans do, or have been conditioned to do, or have a tendency to do, whatever, however we want to phrase this, is that they view other people and they put people in those same kind of categories. Whether or not this is a normal, natural thing, or whether this is the product of a society that has conditioned us to view others as stepping stones, to view others as commodities. That's something that we haven't really talked much about on this stream. Ooh, we need to have a whole conversation about commodification and commodity fetishism. Boy, that's going to be fun. Good. It is good, and it's funny. I said that sarcastically, but actually it will be a lot of fun. It's going to be really super interesting. Can't tell me what I'm, only I make that determination. Right, you can't tell me what I am. Only I make that determination. Right, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's no thing that I can believe about you. Right, and this is again where we come into this conflict of belief and truth. So, and truth and knowledge. Oh, so there's another distinction to be made here. So, belief is something that I have that has to do with my expressions, right? Knowledge is not necessarily the same kind of thing, in that there is no belief that I can have, period, and that belief is going to have any influence over your material reality. Knowledge isn't like that, because knowledge can do that. There's knowledge that I can have, that I can disclose to you, which will fundamentally change you. That's a true thing about knowledge, that's distinct from belief, right? And it might be that I say the thing based on my belief, and that what comes out is some kind of knowledge that translates into some kind of change in your world. And the reason why I'm using this way is has to do with Foucault's power/knowledge. And I think I'd mentioned this before. Foucault always means those two at the same time, all the time, in all of the ways. And I'm not very explicit about that when I'm talking about this, and I need to be better about being more clear about that. Knowledge in this way is a kind of truth or a kind of belief. It's in that same realm, but it has a different kind of power. It has power in the world, in that it changes the world with its being. Knowledge does that, whereas belief doesn't. Belief expresses itself through people's actions in the culmination of biopower, which is slightly distinct from power itself, which is it's not splitting hairs. It sounds like it's splitting hairs, but it's slightly different. I've seen knowledge as a highly confident belief. Okay, knowledge. I see knowledge as a highly confident belief. Right. Knowledge has power. Knowledge isn't just an idea that you have in your head or what compels you. So knowledge and power sometimes are, knowledge and belief sometimes are the same thing. In the same way that I talked about, sometimes knowledge and truth is the same thing, and then sometimes it's completely different, and there's lots of ways it's completely different. Belief and knowledge have that same kind of relationship. Sometimes the two are identical things, but oftentimes it's more complicated, and usually they're completely different kinds of things. Trying to think of good ways to contrast this. Foucault and power knowledge. It's not something that's really easily condensed. Right. Oh, so knowledge can be a thing like it can be a thing like if laws, I think, are often a good example of this. And what I mean is like the legal system. If you've been evicted, but you don't know anything about tenant laws, you are powerless in the face of your eviction. Excuse me. Welcome in, DJ Che. Thank you so much for the raid. It's so good to see you. I'm probably close to wrapping up, but that's okay. We're finishing up our talk on we've been talking about free will, determinism. We really haven't tied much into anarchism, other than the overarching project is what we are working on right now is reevaluating prefiguration so that we can make sure that we are making ourselves the kinds of revolutionary beings from a decolonized lens that we want to be. So in this endeavor, we're trying to suss out the differences between truth and knowledge, suss out the difference between knowledge and belief, and then now we're talking about power knowledge as it relates to all of these complicated ideas. Knowledge. If you have the knowledge about laws, about tenant laws, then you have some power. But it's relative. It's it's relative to lots of things. It's relative first to your belief, right? You have to have more than just the knowledge. You have to have belief in the institutions and belief that you can do something about it. Those things have to concur. But you also have to have enough knowledge about what to do. What are the next steps to go, and how do I research the steps beyond that? And if you don't have your foot in the door, then it's hard to say that you actually have knowledge / power in the meaningful way that we mean here, because it has to be able to translate to changes that can be that are made in the world. That it's a thing that is almost demonstrable in itself. In its expression through the activities of people around the thing. Right? That there is recourse for tenants because there are tenants' law is a thing. It's a phenomenon in the world. And it's a phenomenon in the world not just because of the laws, but because other people believe that those laws are a course for recourse, so that they can have some kind of way to defend themselves against those kinds of ideas, right? It requires a lot of things to come together in the world for the world to work in such a way that responds to the knowledge in a way that doesn't necessarily work. Doesn't work with just belief, right? You can believe that you have been wrongfully evicted all you want. You can believe that till the cows come home. But if that belief is not informed by knowledge that coheres with states of affairs in the world that will provide you with mechanisms of recourse, then that belief is not doing you any good, right? And this can still be the same kind of belief that you believe in, that recycling is real and that you ought to do it, right? That climate change is real and you ought to recycle. It might be that you have a fervent, committed, and you are going to do things in the world. You're going to yell and you're going to argue with people and you're going to fight the police when they show up to evict you, right? That would be a belief, and demonstrating a solid, concrete belief in the world that you have been wrongly convicted. But that belief doesn't cohere with the appropriate knowledge, which would make the world such that that belief has any meaning, right? Now we're going back to what do you mean by mean, right? At that time, I was like, there's so much that I want to do with that. And I just can't do it all. It's just not. There's only so much you can do. I don't support Israel. I don't know why you would ask such a silly question, Kassir. Yep. Yeah, I'll just let Jane take this. The state of Israel is committing a genocide. Right now, it's been ongoing. Yeah, okay, and that's why you brought it up. That's why you brought it up. Oh, you didn't see that? Oh, I gotcha. I don't know how you miss it. This is a prominent feature. If you came in and didn't see this, I'm doing something wrong here, right? What do you mean, proof? You know what? I don't want to play with you. But that's not going to be worth anybody's time. I guess what I should do is say, hey, Kassir, do you support Israel? Do you support Israel? Because if you do, then that's going to make this real easy. Yeah. Thanks for the follow. But yeah, isn't that the truth? Colonizers never stop at one country. Thank you for Kiyomatara for providing the proof that they requested, but at this point, it's hard to imagine that's a good faith argument, right? I am all about entertaining the good faith argument. I am all about it all day. It's just hard to believe that person was coming from a good faith perspective. And, maybe they'll send me an unban request and maybe I'll consider it. So, we'll see. Probably not. I never look. The only time I ever open up mod view is to ban people. So I'm not checking in later to see if I've got unban requests. I just don't spend my time doing that kind of stuff. I wonder if the right can't be political article complements Anarch's video as it argues that anti-hierarchy/rebellion is a natural way of human dynamics. Haven't seen Anarch's one myself. No, I haven't either. And like I said, I will be reading your article maybe later today. I might just blow off some of my school stuff and do that. And then we'll cover it on stream. I definitely want to talk about that one on stream, and I'll probably talk about the other one. I know I still want to talk about the ally one. That one's going to be salient too. It's just a matter of getting there. Yeah, that's how I felt about it, Jane. It was just I'm so bombarded with news from what's going on in Palestine. We had the ceasefire, and there was like that momentary yay, and then like the news today is just they've just started indiscriminately bombing again. There are it's anyone who is still walking around going, where's the proof? Fuck you. Just fuck you. Fuck you. We don't have time for your dumb shit here. Fuck off. The proof is everywhere. The quote ceasefire. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but rather than ending on a negative note, I want to end on a positive note, and I think it would be very helpful for me to get this out loud. This is something that I've been thinking about, and I think that it's really important for me to get this out. Is that I find you all remarkably grounding. That there, after the conversation with after last stream, right? Thinking about doing things, and you only do what you want to do, and I've recently been having some struggles with the stream. Some things that have been pushing me to feel like I didn't want to stream anymore. And to be honest, what kept me coming back was you all. So thank you for being here, and thank you for being awesome. That I knew that you all were gonna be here, and that I wanted that. I wanted the opportunity to be grounded with you, and to have some conversations with some comrades who have very similar values to me, and to have really deep, meaningful conversations about those values is something that I need. It's something that I know that I need, and that's why I keep coming back. Is because you guys are so awesome, and are a good community of people, and help me remember that it's not all hopeless. So again, thanks. Thank you all for being here. Let's find a raid target. Find somewhere to go to spread our love and to take our awesome community somewhere else. Yeah. It's been a while since we raided Into a Difficult Truth. Let's go see them. It's been a while. All right. So, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for all the support, all the brilliant things that you continue to put in chat. Thank you, Jane, for putting stuff in the Discord, for all of the content that we have waiting for us to dive into. Thank you, Kaya Matara, for all of the content that you've provided that we've talked about over and over numerous times now, and for there being a backlog of stuff that I can't wait to talk about. Thank you all for being who you are. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and until the next time I see you, be excellent to each other.